Welcome to the Inner Circle Podcast, the premier podcast for Xbox. I'm your host, KRXKL, with Direwolf 484, and today's episode is an Inner Circle special as we welcome guest senior producer of the Forza Motorsport franchise from 10's Studios, Nick Laing. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thanks, Cal. Sam, nice to hear from you.
Good to meet you, dude. It's great to have you on.
Absolutely. Wonderful to be here. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Now, I know we can't discuss, everything that's happening at Microsoft, the big secret things that's happened at Turn 10. This special is going to be a little bit different. Obviously, E3 is around the corner. Everyone is tight-lipped about what's going to be shown, and we're all excited to see what Microsoft has to offer. So we're going to take a different approach on this episode and try to get fans to understand the process. So before we begin, Nick, tell us how you got started in the industry and how you ended up at Turn 10 Studios.
How did I get started in the industry? It's funny. Every once in a while, I'll talk to somebody that's brand new, trying to break in or just got in and ask me that same question with the idea that maybe there's something I can learn from Nick's career. And I was like, first, don't pay any attention to what I'm about to tell you. Second, an interesting sort of wandering route into the industry is probably only good for producers. So, like, if you're an engineer, you probably don't want to have a story like mine. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. So, a long time ago, I thought I wanted to be a comic book illustrator. So, I spent a lot of time training and practicing, and I loved all that. And I went to a school called the Kubert School in northern New Jersey, which is highly focused on fantasy art, sequential art, cartoons, and graphics, like graphic design. So if you guys know some of your comic book background, Joe Kubert is one of those golden age artists and invented Hawkman and did like Sergeant Rock and stuff like that forever. So I went to school there. They accept about, in my orientation class, there was 118 students. In my graduation class, 3 years later, there were 32.
Wow.
So one of the things that they do in that school, aside from teach you how to draw, they stress basically professional creative or professional art. So you have to be able to draw well and on time. And you would lose entire letter grades for every minute past the deadline. So because there's always another artist to hire. And if you don't perform you don't perform expertly on time, we'll just get another one. That was kind of drilled into me. So it's work ethic, right? Well, my last year was the year that Marvel went bankrupt. So I started working and I did some on and off jobs with Marvel, DC, Dark Horse. I worked for Wizards of the Coast.
Wow. Just
barely scraping along because nobody was doing any comic book stuff in the early 90s anymore. Or I'd say mid 90s at that point. So I do what all illustrators do and I get a job as a graphic designer. When they can't find work, they become graphic designers. And I did couple of jobs here and there. Did a bunch of stuff for, you guys know, Casio G-Shock watches?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did a bunch of graphic work for them, which included like graffiti and art and comic book stuff. And it was always really dynamic and exciting and it was really cool. And, but I learned really, really well a bunch of software applications for graphic design. So Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, a bunch of other stuff, PageMaker, Quark. There was a local game company that was trying to hire somebody, and I got the job, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I said, hey, do you mind telling me why? It was a really weird interview, and it was nothing like I'd ever done before, and I didn't know anything really about it. And said, hey, just so I know, what got me the job? The company's called Hypnotics, by the way, out of Little Falls, New Jersey. There's less than 15 people there when I started working there. They made such luminary hits as Outlaw Golf, Outlaw Tennis. Those are good first Xbox releases. Mm-hmm. Does anybody remember those?
I do. Yep.
Right.
Outlaw Golf? I don't. Outlaw Tennis? Mm-mm.
And Outlaw Volleyball.
Nah, I don't remember those. I must have missed that one.
I'm going to let you do some YouTube searches a little bit later. Maybe we'll follow up.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely gonna check those out.
We did a bunch of other games there. Mostly education, worked for PBS and Sesame Street, Scholastic, and also I think my first couple of weeks there, we worked on a Dreamcast game, and they were finishing up a 3DO title or something like that. We're going back to pretty far. We're going back 20 years or something. Anyway, so when I asked, I said, hey, well, what got me the job? He goes, well, first, I know the school that you come from. I know you guys work, and that's really important to me. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I don't mind getting a job just because of hard work. So also, we weren't able to find anybody else that could do both Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator with equal competency. I'm like, oh, okay. that just kind of gives you a window into like what kind of world we were living in. The sprites that we were making for the games that we continued to make were actually pencil and paper on a pegboard on a light box, done like a traditional animation, and we'd scan them into a with a batch scanner. Actually, at first we did them one at a time, but we ended up buying a Fuji batch scanner for like $3,000 because they didn't make them back in '99.
Right.
One at a time, pencil drawn stuff scanned into an application called Adobe Animator, and it ran, or no, not Adobe Animator. It was, I can't remember, Animator Pro, and it ran with a DOS prompt.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty old school back then.
Right.
And I just got hired to do basically to do graphics, and then one of the Outlaw games came up, and they needed a bunch of concept art. And so I said, hey, I can help out over there. And they said, all right, we need as many of these. We needed a character in a swimsuit. We just need as many of these as we can get by the end of the week. And so I just sat down. They had an art table there that nobody was using. I sat down and I just started doing it. And again, if there's anything I can do, it was just kind of put my head down and do a thing that I know how to do. And I walked in and I said, okay, it was like Friday. I started the job on Tuesday, walked in on Friday. I said, all right, I've got them. And I handed him the stack of paper. It's basically just copy paper. And he said, oh, is this from everybody? And I said, no, this is from me. He goes, how many drawings are here? I said, 93. He goes, you did 93 drawings in 5 days? I said, well, it was 4 days. He goes, we usually get 12.
Wow.
And I said, I'm just doing my thing. So all of a sudden then it was, those two things just sort of got me on the road towards, now I end up being sort of the guy in the artist's pin, which we call the area where all the artists work. I could type the fastest, and I was organized, especially for an artist. I don't consider myself organized by any means, but in a room full of artists, I'm probably pretty good. So then you become, you become basically the lead artist. Oh, we'll just go talk to Nick because he always knows where everything is. And then once you get that job, it's not too far from saying, oh, the company's branching into 2 different games. We need somebody that we can count on to do this liaison with, at that time, what might have been Scholastic.
Right.
So somewhere around that time, I realized, I don't do any art anymore. It was a slow, gradual thing. So I'm not doing art anymore, but what I'm doing is I'm helping artists, clear their plate and clear their mind so they can do their best work. And I'm helping clients and customers understand at the right perspective and right depth what's going on with their product. And also guys like keeping the founders of the company, trying to just keep them happy, keep them with the right amount of information so that they feel like they know what's going on and they're not panicked that they don't know what's going on.
Right.
And it's funny, I've been doing that for a while. When EA came in and we did some stuff for EA through both the Redwood Shores office and the Orlando office, just kind of some new IP and cleaning up some extra work. And one of the executive producers at the Orlando office came up and said, hey, you're actually a really good producer. And I went, not really sure what that means. And so sometime around 2004 or so, I realized that it'd been a long time since I was an artist, and then I was a So at that time, it was more designer producer. And once I moved to EA in 2004, late 2004, I think, middle of 2004 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the production track ever since. And I worked on Arena Football League, AFL, and
Nice.
Was that it was the original Xbox and PS2?
Yeah, I got that game.
Yes.
I picked that game up.
That game, that was really fun because the first time we worked with a huge code base like the original Madden at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting to try and work your way through it, not having built it. And what I realized looking back is that almost all games are like that now. You never write the first line of code in a game world, hardly anymore, not in the AAA space, right? You're always, you're using middleware, you're using last year's engine, you're iterating on something else.
Right.
Yeah. And so that was really my first experience with, it works, but we're not sure how.
Right.
Okay, well, let's spend some time figuring out how so we can make it better next time. I also learned a really good lesson on that title because I was operating as lead designer at the time, and there were no creative directors back then. It's funny because there was a executive producer and a producer, and there was a lead designer and other designers.
I remember,
and that was it.
Yeah.
There was still probably 60 or 70 people on the entire team at its largest, but now we've got all these different levels and stuff like that, and sometimes it gets confusing. But one of the interesting things about arena football that's unique to it is that you play both sides of the ball. So you're basically playing for the entire clock. There's a couple of positions that don't do that, but in general, you really need to manage your stamina.
Mm-hmm.
And so how you play which side of the ball really depends on, how you need to manage your stamina really depends on how you play each side of the ball. So I built this really detailed and nuanced fatigue system into the game. It was I keep it, actually. It's easily accessible wherever I am, so I can look at it. It's a matrix that's probably 60 by 60 with all the attributes of the different activities would have on different portions of your body, including like throwing on your throwing arm, but also blocking with that same arm or getting tackled from that same side.
Wow.
So you can start to measure out how hurt maybe as a quarterback in that example your throwing arm might be because of the other things that you had to do with it up until that point, and the cumulative damage and your own sort of endurance and healing rate and things like that. There's really complicated stuff, and I was really proud of it, and it was really the wrong thing to do.
Really? Wow, this sounds amazing.
Man, it was such a problem. Me and the lead designer, his name is Chris, or the lead engineer on that system was Chris Hare. And Chris Hare is a really, really smart guy. And he and I worked together on some really complicated kids games, which is really kind of funny thing to say. But we loved it. Like, we just ate it up because it was complicated, technical, really, truly entrenched simulation kind of, hardcore RPG sort of game element. Building it was so fun. Testing it was exhausting but exhilarating at the same time because you had to come up with ways to test the matrix, and it was just really, really compelling the entire time until probably it was in the game for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I realized it is so complicated, nobody's ever going to understand it, and it is so detailed you can't ever really tell what's happening. Like, I would know because I built it,
right,
but nobody else would know.
Right.
So they had this really complicated system that was kind of under the hood but displayed to them through UI and UX. And if I stood there and I walked you through it as it was happening, you would say, oh, I get it. Wow, that's really a lot of stuff. But really what happened is you just want to play football.
Right.
Yeah.
And you want to know if you guys tired or not.
Right.
Really, that's about as far as you want to go. And I always think, like, man, you can really fall into a trap. And in a different world, we'd run into the problem where the producer would have walked up to me and say, man, you gotta move. You can't work on this thing for 2 weeks. You get 3 days.
That type of thing right there is, first of all, I just want to say that as someone who played both high school and college football, I just want to say that right there is super authentic to what being an athlete is like, because you get injuries. Those injuries don't go away. Like, they don't go away. You play with those things for weeks. You know, I've been hit plenty of times where I've had an injury an entire season. It didn't hurt the way it did the first time, but it affects you. And if you keep getting hit a certain way on a certain area over time, yeah, you start to lose. I won't say stamina, but you start to sort of baby it a little bit and lean towards it a little bit because you don't want to get fully damaged. I think, I could imagine what that's
even if
like.
you still do a 100% job with that side, you're still thinking about it.
Right.
So there's a portion of the brain that's not in there.
Right.
So, Cal, you touched on something that if I go back even further in my career, I thought I was going to be probably a wrestling coach because I wrestled and I played football. And I played football at a community college, and just because I love football so much, I'm not very good at it. But those kind of details were some of the stuff I was trying to bring out.
Right.
And I do the same. I did the same thing with EA Sports MMA, which because I spent after wrestling and after football went away, I just went all into boxing and kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. So I brought back some really top level, sophisticated stuff into EA Sports MMA, and everybody got really riled around it. And we had a couple other like blue belts and brown belts in jiu-jitsu there, and they were like really excited. And we went and we mocapped. In fact, that picture of me in the mocap suit,
right,
that's me at the university, or actually that might be, I'm doing mocap for EA Sports MMA.
Oh, wow, cool.
I mean, actually, I'm posing in that photo, but that was the day that I was doing some of the stuff in the game because we needed to get some of this work done. And I had done the animation, the original animation tree. Now, what happened from the original animation tree to what it actually is, which is far better than my original sort of framework, there's a total difference. But because I understood it, that's what I was doing. But adding the nuance in there is really important. And coming from a studio like EA Sports, where people know what they're talking about. You can fall down that trap really easily.
Wow. That's I listen, it's good to have people that work at Microsoft. As a fan of Xbox, it's good to have people that work at Microsoft that have this experience, and the fact that you have that code. A lot of fans have been wanting a boxing game for a very, very long time. And I don't know if Microsoft has ever considered doing a boxing game, but man, if they did, I would love to see that type of engine put into a new boxing title for the platform, or any boxing title for the platform. Like, one of the reasons why I loved NFL 2K, and to this day still love NFL 2K, was because of the way they did their fatigue system. And I look at Madden, and Madden's a great game, don't get me wrong, in its own right, but it's just something about 2K that really separated it. And like you said, most people just want to know if their players are fatigued. But could you imagine just playing a game and you got Aaron Rodgers and he's like a 95 overall and he's just getting pummeled from, the lefty end all day long and his right arm starts to wane. Now that 95 drops to 88 and, his accuracy is off and he's throwing interceptions. That's a huge strategy. In a huge way to play the game. It really changes the dynamic of everyone just trying to throw the ball downfield and just score a lot of points, to really having strategies in how you attack the quarterback, how you hit running backs, who you want to take out, who you want to wear down. I think that's just genius. That's genius.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that stuff is really fun. That stuff is really, let me ask you this. Do you think, so I love boxing games. I love real boxing games. Not that I dislike fighting games, but you can always kind of tell the difference between, this is a fighting game, this is a button combo game versus this is a sports strategy game.
Right. Sure.
So are we ever going to get a better boxing game than the Fight Night Champion?
I don't know. That was the best one, in my opinion. I love Fight Night. Everybody's crying for a new Fight Night. I think UFC is cool. Like, I've played UFC 1 and 2. But it's just something about boxing, being able to bob, weave, maintain your stamina, try not to get knocked out, hitting certain areas of the body, whether you're taking body shots to the ribs or pummeling the right side of the face. Like, we don't have that anymore. I think mainly because you don't see a lot of stars like it was back in the day, where you knew this guy's a champion, but that guy's a champion, and that guy's a champion.
Right.
And the heavyweight division used to be the premier division.
Yep.
You know, now it's more like the welterweight or the light,
Yep.
you know, the light heavyweight or whatever. And those divisions are really where everybody is at. But those divisions don't have a lot of knockouts because the power isn't there the way it used to be. So it would be cool, man, if we were ever able to get a game like that again. I don't know if EA will do it. I would love for Microsoft to dabble in it. When I spoke to Phil back in the day, because a lot of people was asking, like, why don't we have a baseball game? You know, everybody wants a baseball game on Xbox. You look at what Sony has, and 2K's not doing baseball anymore. And Phil was like, one of the issues that he felt was a problem was, first, he wouldn't take any studio that Microsoft has off of the projects that they're already on. Yeah. And if he did do it, he would want to bring in a third party to do it. And then you got to talk about the baseball license and how expensive that is year in and year out and what that goes into. And I don't know what that would be like for boxing, but I look at some sports like boxing, like baseball, that you either don't have games in, or there's only one game in, and that one game is really where people will go to get that game. So I mean, if Microsoft came out with a boxing game, you can even put some legends in there. You know, like, I haven't seen Floyd Mayweather in a boxing game. I know a lot of people hate Floyd, but I still think he's one of the best defensive boxers ever.
So, look, if you want to talk about business for a little bit, like, that licensing cost is for real with baseball, but it's still fairly cheap compared to some of the other licenses that you can kind of get into out there.
Right.
I mean, the F1 and the NFL come to mind as just monumentally expensive groups to work with. Totally worth it because they got a great product. You know, they know what they've got.
Right.
With boxing, you could probably fill a roster and not spend any money at all until you got to Floyd. And then what happens with Floyd is that he wants so much money for his likeness that he can't, that no game can afford to put him in because he'll never make it on the other side. Now, I think it's funny. Floyd is to boxing what Major League Baseball is to baseball, in the sense that once you got the license, you can do an awful lot of stuff. You can make a really cool game. You make a lot of baseball fans really happy. But then if I'm sitting in Phil's seat and I'm like, all right, let's get into baseball, I think, well, there's whatever that market is already there. So I have to go. So not only do I have to pay money for a license, but I also have to pay money to leap ahead. I mean, how long they've been making that game down in San Diego? Like,
a long time.
Years or something?
Since I was small, they've been making the show. Yeah, they've been making the show for a minute.
Yeah. So that's a tough business decision. Like, I lament a couple of things. One, that there's no that you know, baseball, right? That'd be great to see more baseball games. It'd be great to see more boxing games. Things like, you guys remember Twisted Metal?
Yes,
I do.
Yes. Yeah.
What? Why is there not another Twisted Metal game?
Right.
You know, that sounds like, man, feels like a bunch of 12-year-old, 13-year-old kids would love that game.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I got two personal favorites. I mean, that one's pretty good, but my other one is a Mutant League. Do you remember the Mutant League hockey, Mutant League football?
Yes.
Man, I love that stuff. Or the NFL Street franchise. Now I'm obviously biased because I worked on NFL Street. But those are great, just really good sort of entry level games into the really truly complex world of, you know, Madden. You know, you could be 8, 9, 10, 11 years old and start with NFL Street and then get into Madden, you know, when you're 18, 19, 20.
Right.
Or you could be, you know, 40, 50 years old and still have a good time with an NFL Street title.
Right.
But for me, also coming from a car background, I always loved Wipeout. Or So you remember on the original Xbox, was it Quantum Redshift?
Quantum Redshift. Yep.
Oh yeah, man. There's like a genre name for those. I think Hyperspeed Racers.
Yeah,
Hyperspeed Racers.
That's like the F-Zero series and Quantum Redshift, Wipeout. They got a few new ones in the indie genre. You know, a game that hasn't been replicated, Jet Set Moto? Was it Jet Moto? Jet Moto.
Oh, it's that Radio Future?
No, Jet Moto on a PS2, where you would ride hover bikes. Do you remember that game? It was like
It's
these hover motorcycles.
Ringing faint bell.
Yeah.
So here's a secret from my background. This will sound pretty funny coming from the guy that works for Xbox. In 2000, I don't know, maybe 3 or so, maybe 2002, 2003, I did an original Xbox titles port to PS2. And that was the last time that I ever really worked on a PlayStation game. And I also,
Wow.
and I didn't, and also that was the last time I had bought a PlayStation console because I had a PSX and I never had a PS2. My roommate at the time had a PS2.
Right.
And that's it. Like I've actually been only with Xbox the whole time. Titles like,
Wow.
I know. And you know what it was is like, for me personally, I know not everybody's the same way. But for me, it was just the absolute love affair I had with the original Halo and Forza.
Yeah. Halo and Forza, those are, I mean, the tentpole franchises, right? For Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly.
They keep on going and they keep on building.
It's funny because we had a conversation. We just did a podcast last week, and we had that same conversation. People couldn't understand why would you stick, why do you like Xbox? People ask you these questions. Like, you got all these games on these other platforms. I'm like, bro, there's just something about what Xbox delivers that I like. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody is not going to like the same things, but if you're attracted to something and you enjoy those products that platform produces, why do you feel like you need to go anywhere else if that's where you're getting all your excitement and fun from? It's not to say you couldn't dabble into a different product, but at the same time, to judge a product based on what you think is great doesn't mean anything to a person who may see differently. So that's impressive that you've only been rocking with Xbox since back in the day. I know a lot of Xbox fans are gonna love to hear that. Like, man, we got Xbox there that only rock with Xbox. Hell yeah!
So, I can back it up too. I actually. So The Last of Us came out, and at the time I was running the incubation and innovation lab for EA. And so I had like 4 or 5 super smart, like top of their game guys working for me at the time. And a couple of them were playing this game and they're like, this is really good. And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of really good games that I just don't play because I have to pick and choose where I spend my time. And they were like, you need to play this game. And I'm not really a big story guy, and they're trying to sell me on stories, I'm like, gameplay leads, right? Gameplay leads. Right. Story is great and I love it, but the gameplay leads and then the story supports. Anyway, that's my philosophy. So they really talked me into this. This is the best story game of all time. I'm like, well, I can't play it because I don't have a PS3. And they're like, what? I'm like, the only PS3 I have is right there on my desk, and EA gives it to me so I can make sure that all the games work for it. And so my boss happened to be there, and he goes, Nick, unplug that PS3, take it home.
We will make sure you have played this. This will be on your record. This will be in your history.
So that's right. He's like, this is going to be part of your yearly review.
That's funny.
Thing in your backpack and you walk your ass out the door.
That is hilarious.
To be fair, there are worse yearly reviews out there. There really are.
True.
So.
That's true.
Man, so it sounds like you had an amazing journey to turn 10. How did you get there?
Oh, yeah, that's a pretty good question. I was in between jobs at EA. Basically every year a game stops or a game ships, and so you can kind of you shuffle the deck and you go work on another team. People move around. It was a really good job for me because I kind of have professional ADHD and I always want to do something different. So they'd move me around and it was great fun. Well, it was kind of a slow period of time, and buddy of mine, Jason Barnes, who was the original creative director on NFL Street 3 or NFL Street 1. He went and a bunch of other things, obviously. Mm-hmm. He had gone to turn 10. And he's working with a guy there that we used to work with, Phil Frazier from our old Madden days. And he goes, hey, I just got a job. Like, he's calling me from the hotel room. He's like, I just got a job at Turn 10. I was like, oh, it's amazing. I love their stuff. He goes, I know, because he knows how much I play Forza. I used to play Forza after working all day on NASCAR for EA. Not that NASCAR wasn't, not that I needed to go back and play something else. It was more because I loved that game so much.
That's just hilarious.
My wife would be like, "Are you okay?" I mean, in the head is what
But you got that passion for it. That's good.
He calls me up and he goes, "I think that they've got another job opening." I'm like, "Well, EA's been good to me. I've been here for over 10 years. I'm not really looking for a job." And he goes, "I don't know. I just read the job description. It sounds like it was written for you." And he reads it to me. And I'm like, "Oh, it does actually sound pretty good." I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll go out there." And so I flew out and had the interview, and it was almost 10 hours long.
What?
Well, for a senior producer role, they really want to make sure that everybody's on board, and
Right.
You only get one day. So I'm there at 8:30 in the morning. I leave after everybody's gone.
Wow.
And basically 1.5 hour meeting after another. And just have a great time talking about race cars and stuff like that, and talking about automotive passion and video games, and had a really good time. I don't know if I had mentioned, but my background, my family, my dad paid the bills and fed his family as in professional racing our entire lives.
Wow.
As a fabricator and a crew chief working on NASCAR, a lot of IMSA, Trans Am. Also was crew chief for Dick Simon's Olivetti car in Indy during the IndyCar series.
Yeah.
So, I guess I have a lot to share. And I probably put at that point, so Forza Motorsport 5 had just come out, but I was still playing Forza Motorsport 4. And I'd probably put about 400 hours into the game at that point.
Wow.
Not counting, triple digit numbers in 1 through 3 at the time. So anyway, I had a lot to talk about with that group while I was there. And but to tell you the truth, at the end of the day, it's kind of half and half. Like, I don't know. I mean, I have a really good thing at EA. I live in Florida. I'm not really sure what's going to happen next, but we'll see how it goes. And the very last interview was Dan Greenwald. Did you guys ever meet him?
Absolutely. That's my man.
All right. So, so then good. So Dan's great. He, really, really smart guy, really interesting, like super intense. And we had basically a half-hour meeting, but turned into an hour. And I thought that we really connected. And I thought, hey, you know what? This is really, that particular moment said, this actually is something I'm really interested in. And then basically after that, it came back. They said, sure, let's give it a shot, move my entire family all the way across the country. We drove an RV all the way, by the way, from Orlando all the way to Redmond. And we took a week. It was awesome. So then I showed up at Turn 10. We helped, I managed a bunch of teams for the Forza Motorsport 6 title with the Ford GT on the cover. I still miss that. I still miss that car. I love it. What's good is that Alan, the studio boss, put his Ford GT in the lobby, so I get to pass it every day.
Wow. That's
cool.
Yeah. And then I basically been spending time there. So shipped FM7, managing a bunch of the teams, the gameplay teams and presentation teams, and car physics and all that kind of stuff, audio. And then shipped FM7 as basically lead producer. So just my job is making sure that all these other experts have the freedom and the runway and the chance to do their best work. And they always know what's most important.
Wow. Listen, man, that is an amazing journey. When you think about that, you think about where you started in comics, brother, to move up to the lead producer of Forza Motorsport 7. Wow. That's
quite a journey.
That's quite a journey. Absolutely.
So we're back to my original statement. Don't try and do what I did. I'm not.
Yeah, no, I think everybody who wants to be a developer, I'll tell you this though. I think thanks to the indie program and indie development, it's given people who want to be developers an opportunity to be one. And I think that's been really great for the generation, when you grow up as a kid, you play these games and you want to be a developer. And it's intimidating, thinking about what it is that you have to go through to produce a game. What goes into the work, the mindset, the education that you need to be a developer. And some people are taking on those roles. Me personally, I would love to make a game. I'm a very creative person, but I probably don't have the time to go to school to do it. So I'd rather be someone that's creative, that comes up with ideas for games, or be a writer for games. So I've been trying to communicate with Joe Staten, because he's been writing the Halo series and the Halo novels for such a long time. And I just want to pick his brain on how to be a writer for game development, and I know it's different than just writing a normal story and stuff like that. But, there's a lot of avenues to get into the industry. So, yeah, definitely impressed with that.
Yeah. I think I don't do too much with story as far in games, but I've done a little bit. And as near as I can figure, the most valuable asset to be a game writer is intensely thick skin and zero fear, because you're going to write this really great story, and then somebody like me is going to come up to you and go, yeah, that big conflict at the end of Act 2, we can't do that because there's too many polygons. But that's how we, that's the entire resolution of the act. How am I supposed to tell a story? Well, we can put you in a coffee shop. Well,
wow.
I know you needed the Battle of Helm's Deep, but we can only afford to put 3 characters on the screen.
Wow.
Then you got to write your way out of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely a different approach.
Not at this moment, no. Though I am curious in terms of, this might be a little generalized, so I'm not sure if you can answer this per se, but obviously the demand for better graphics, better performance, that's just an ongoing race every single year. How does Turn 10 deal with that stress, so to speak? How do you deal with the demand that, okay, every 2 years we've got to deliver something that looks even better, that performs even better, that it's the new showpiece for Microsoft, basically?
That is a great question. I really like the way you worded it. How does Turn 10 deal with the stress of needing to be effectively the showcase of graphics? And it really is like that. It's for a game team that knows it needs to, it's always about innovation, bleeding edge, coolest, bestest. Last month's trailer is garbage compared to next month's trailer, regardless of which game it is. We're always looking for that. And a lot of teams really do take that on as a stress, that this is a pillar of what they need to achieve. I think one of the things that's in the secret sauce at Turn 10, there is no stress. Not that it isn't hard or difficult, but that bleeding edge graphics, that beautiful, beautiful cutting edge, shocking, never before seen on a TV screen level of world-class art detail, rendering technology, that's the passion of the technology groups at Turn 10. Then they're already thinking of ways to break the barrier, not just push the boundaries, but break the barrier of what the hardware does right now. That's what makes that sort of that rendering and engine technology. That's what just makes them get up in the morning and come to work.
Wow. That's awesome. That's fantastic.
It could be it could apply that stress to other teams, but that's in the fuel at Turn 10.
So that's just part of the challenge. That's just part of the workday, is that excitement, thinking over your coffee, how, on your commute, on the bus, whatever, how can we make this look even better? That's awesome.
That's exactly right. How you probably hear guys that are, especially guys that are new to game, teams, their game comes out and they're so excited and they're just hitting refresh on Metacritic, Well, I'm not exaggerating when I say a sizable portion of our team will hit refresh on Digital Foundry.
That makes sense.
Just waiting for them to say, hey, we profiled this game, and somebody's got printed up on their wall somewhere, The devs at Turn 10 are wizards. Something like that.
I believe that was from back when the X was still called Project Scorpio, when Digital Foundry got to look at the hardware. I believe I remember that exact article.
Yeah. That's the fuel. It's in the water at Turn 10.
Okay, well, just off the top of my head, this is a small thing, and I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, but how many people are working at Turn 10? I've actually run into very contradictory numbers when trying to get employee headcounts or anything like that, and we're doing research.
Well, I know that, so it is something that we don't really publicize.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fine.
One of the reasons is that it changes a lot.
Sure.
But we are appropriately staffed as are all the first party titles.
Of course.
Yeah, and it changes quite a bit.
So, listen, Forza Motorsport is considered the king of racers based on quality and ratings. What goes into producing the game so quickly while maintaining the quality of the franchise?
Well, quickly is an interesting word because working at EA Sports, we shipped world-class titles every year. So so that's slightly different. It's relative. There are people I work with that think 24 months is just not enough time. It would be great if we had more time. I think that we've actually got a really good balance with our sister title Horizon, and we kind of build off of each other's lessons, build off of each other's passion. So it's always really helpful. I think that is really good. So we, in a sense, we stay fresh 12 months a year with two different titles. So, and I think that helps.
Right.
I think another thing that helps is having clarity around what we are, and you just said we're the king of all racers. And so we just need to be the best racing game anybody's ever played.
Right.
And so, okay, let's start there.
Right. I'm trying to. Do you guys think that Microsoft? Well, let me not say Microsoft. Would you guys consider Forza to sort of be like a sports franchise? Obviously, with the alternating titles between Horizon and Forza, people feel like you get these games every other year. It reminds us of sports franchises where you get Madden every year or 2K, NBA 2K every year. Would you consider that be a part of that genre, or do you think racing should be in its own class by itself?
Yeah, that's tough. That is real. I'm going to be honest. I usually have an opinion about just about everything. I don't think I have a strong opinion here because sports is in our title.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
sport.
It's going to be really hard to argue myself out of, are we a sports game or not? So I do think we are a sports game.
Right.
But when it comes to what we do, other than what we do, the actual gameplay, remember I said I always lead with gameplay. In FIFA, nothing matters more than locomotion. Moving that character around, pivots, plants, ball control, everything else. I mean, it could just be Pong scores, but if you got that thing down, people will play that game because it's compelling. You could argue that the same thing for NBA 2K and the same thing for NFL. Like, you're moving humans around, and we are all experts in what it's like to see a human move around or to be a human moving around. So it's hard. It's really hard to make that that is an almost near unachievable goal to be perfect at that, because so many people are experts in that. Now, when it comes to racing games, not everybody drives 1,000 horsepower, 1,500 pound fiberglass bodied crazy machine, But we all drive cars. So, or most of us do anyway. So we kind of have a frame of reference, but it's interesting because it doesn't always match. So if you're out tooling around in your Camry and you want to turn a corner, you kind of gently apply the brakes and go ahead and turn, and then let off the brakes, and then go ahead and get on the gas if you need to go. Now, if you're in a race car doing about 120 miles an hour into the same turn, that is not the way you do that. In fact, so in your Camry, you need to press on the brakes so that you can turn more. In a race car, doing a race car thing, you need to get off the brakes so that the car can turn. This is weird to a lot of people. This is just not, this is because we don't all normally drive our cars at what's called like that 10's, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we have this strange disconnect between what people are experts in. And not all, I mean, we have guys like Tanner Faust shows up to the studio. He's got a challenge out right now in his Beetle, but he knows how to drive a race car. He's automatically very good at our game, especially if we give him a wheel. Joseph Newgarden. I mean, I've got a lap board at work that I refresh every couple of weeks. One of these race car guys comes in, they throw down a lap, they're on the top, just automatically because they're professionals. So whereas we represent the reality very, very well, the experience of racing, it's not exactly the same. So if you were going to judge, how would you judge, is FIFA's locomotion as good as our car driving experience? That's tough.
Right. Not exactly a one-to-one scenario.
Right.
Yeah. So if I see Forza is in the Video Game Awards for Best Sports Game, I'm okay with that. Right. If I see Forza is in the Video Game Awards for Best Driving Game, I'm okay with that too. Maybe it should be in both. What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I'll be honest with you. I don't know why racing games aren't considered games of the year. Like when Forza 3 obviously is a phenomenal game.
Yeah.
It's one of the few games, that I can say that, I kind of grew up out of racing a little bit. I still purchase the Forza franchises, but, I'll play them, every once in a while. But Horizon really got me.
Yeah.
And, with Horizon capturing me, I felt like, man, that was a masterpiece. And I was kind of disappointed it wasn't up for Game of the Year.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's definitely, I mean, once you get into, I'll put it this way. I don't think you'll ever see a Game of the Year or it'll be very, very uncommon to see a Game of the Year that represents something you can see in reality.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
I think that there is, prejudice is too strong of a word, but there is a strong feeling towards the escapism that games represent, presented very clearly. So
true, but one could even argue that these racing titles for many are escapism.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of our superpowers in Forza is that a lot of people are not even going to stand close to most of our cars in our game. Mm-hmm. But if you are a car fan like I am, I love everything that cars stand for. To me, they represent art and they represent technology, but they also represent danger. So I can't get enough of it. But there's some cars in there that people won't normally see. But in our game, you've got the Forza Vista mode. You can open the doors. You can look around in the engine. You can read the stuff that's stamped on the motor. That's pure. To me, I don't know how to me, that is escapism in its purest form. Like, this is a thing I'll never get to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I actually was reading an interesting thread about this very subject a few days ago about how racing games there's about a 99% chance they'll never be considered Game of the Year. But, if there were any racing games that would be deserving, I'd say what you guys do and what the guys over at Playground are doing, it would be in the running for sure.
Oh, yeah. I think that Horizon's such a good game, and it really touches what I'd call like the zeitgeist, the moment in time that games want right now.
Mm-hmm.
Escapism, exploration, constantly getting new things and new things to do, curated Forzathon events and all that kind of stuff. I think I agree with you, Sam. Me and you. Let's write a letter.
We'll see what we can do.
That's funny. Have you
maybe get its own category at the Game Awards as a starter? Like work our way up, baby steps. I don't know.
That'd be cool. With Forza having its story mode and really diving deep into what a title like that sort of brings to the table. I've had conversations with Dan Greenwald at E3 about, you know, as a person who likes the arcade races, Forza definitely quenches that thirst. But you know what I love? I think one of my favorite games of all time was like Need for Speed Most Wanted. You know, one of my favorite races. I won't say of all time. I'm just saying one of my favorite races. And I think it was the intensity of the speed, the NOS. If you go back a little bit further to something like Midnight Club, where you know, you really brought a different aspect of music integration, and this is during a time where rims was everything. It's like right around where, you know, hip hop was coming into a big form in the video game industry, and you had these rims and these, you know, shiny vehicles and these trucks and everything. So they had like the dub edition and everything like that. And I kind of reminds me of the conversation I had with Dan about, you know, I would love to see a game obviously take place in Tokyo, you know, with a lot of drift turns and a lot of like little, you know, fast sporty type cars, NOS, hitting that turbo. And I don't know if Forza will ever do that. And I know Motorsport is more of a sim type racer, a more realistic approach. And I think that's what really separates the two. But something I would like to see from Forza Motorsport is maybe diving into some sort of story aspect. And what I mean by that is maybe you're an up and coming racer, you know, and you're trying to join this tournament, and you enter the tournament and you're working your way up through all of these champions at different stages within the game. You know, now I already know Forza has its own way of doing things. You have championships and you have these tournaments that you're already in. You make money, you buy cars, you work on those cars, you can upgrade the cars. But I just thought that it would be definitely something different than what we've normally gotten. Have you guys ever considered maybe trying to build a story aspect into the Forza Motorsport world?
Yeah, I'll be honest. It comes up quite a bit. And I think what you're touching on is that everybody loves a good sports movie.
Right.
You know, that zero to hero.
Of course.
Work my way through, and I've become an expert. It plots so perfectly to all of our sort of Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces, a perfect 3-arc story. And there's enough, everybody knows enough about the environment of sports where they can kind of make a relationship, a contact point. Mm-hmm. So I'm absolutely down with that. I know 2K did a really good job of that. I thought with my favorite one was it maybe 2015? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Anyway, it's just really good. I love that stuff. I do tend to, now I told you I lead with the gameplay. Let's make sure that the
right.
That bullet, that bullseye, those concentric circles, if that bullseye is not perfect, then everything else is going to be off target. So we got to have a driving experience and a motorsports, I'm going to go that way, motorsports experience that is fully featured and doing everything it needs to be doing.
Right.
There is a concept, though, of narrative over story. So do you guys play Civilization?
Of course.
Okay.
I haven't.
So I play Civilization with a bunch of people. I play Civilization with my brother, we tell stories about this because you go through the years and the eons and the decades, and you start realizing that little barbarian group up in the northeast corner of your map, man, they've been bothering you for 200 years. And then all of a sudden start, you know, the kingdom that's on their border now needs to be fed people and resources from 2 other cities. And so this story about how this border town is constantly on the edge, like it starts to build in your own mind, your own narrative. You start to really kind of attach to certain things. Mm-hmm. I remember playing NCAA football.
Love NCAA.
All I wanted to do was get that first round draft pick. Yep. This is just the way I was playing. It didn't really showcase it all that well, but that's what I was going for. And so I'm a defensive end, and I'm like 3 games in and I've got 7 sacks. And I'm like, I am going to own this whole year. Mm-hmm. They're going to pick me up and this is going to be great. And that's all I'm doing. I don't care what happens in the game. I'm just playing so that my character gets those sacks, because he's going to finally go to the he's going to get the NFL team of his dreams. But what happened is as I started looking at some of the, they kind of give you after game wrap ups and stuff like that. You look at what's going on in the other games and you start realizing, oh, there's a guy out at Fresno State that's one sack behind me. Oh, all of a sudden I've got a nemesis. And I'm finishing my game, and the first thing I do is I go to Fresno State. And I'm like, at the time, I didn't even know where Fresno State was.
Right.
All I knew is there was this kid out there that was getting the same numbers that I was getting. And all of a sudden I'm not going to be what I need to be. So now there's a story there, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's sort of emergent narrative that happens. And that kind of stuff creates a bigger, stronger emotional connection because you're part of that story. And sports games that kind of tend towards the simulation area, they really start to build on that more than a straight up story game. Not that a straight up story game can't do that, right? We talked about Last of Us, and in my household, we still talk about Joel as a father figure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But when you're building that story out of what the game can generate for you through its simulation, it becomes even more contextual and more emotional for you. And I think one of the challenges that modern games are going to have, especially as they start to go towards celebrating things like exploration and open world games, they're going to have to be smarter at contextually understanding what's important to you and letting you get that connection that you're looking for. I think that sports games set you up really well for that.
Right.
So,
it's just
a long way to say, yeah, we've thought about it. So it's cool.
No, absolutely. I think
good answer though. Good answer.
It really is. I think that when you look at 2K and you look at what EA's done with like their Maddens and how they're starting to implement stories, because one of the things people complain about obviously is the turnaround. You're getting the same sports type title with the same rosters almost, and not really much difference between last year's title and the next title before that. I think it's one of the reasons why I've stopped playing Madden, and haven't played it as often as I did. I kind of do like every year or every 2 years or every other year, I pick up a Madden to see if there's a significant change from the last one I played a year and a half or 2 years ago. So, with Forza's been such a dominant franchise for a while now, and your competitor in Gran Turismo still has a very passionate and strong fan base in itself.
Sure.
And Forza's has been battling that for such a long time. I know that it's hard to make changes or do different things, so I was just curious about whether you guys had considered it, because I think that with Horizon, sort of, the second game was great in that it tried to get you to be a star in the Horizon tournament. And the third one was a masterpiece because it made you a boss in the Horizon tournament. So it would be amazing, I thought, if Forza was able to look at those things and look at what EA had done and try to make changes with Madden and 2K with NBA 2K and their story mode. Even NBA Live, I gotta admit, NBA Live story mode, the one, was pretty... interesting. It kind of keeps you going, and that you want to be that star, you want to be that guy. I thought it would be amazing if motorsport eventually did that, where you were just this, racer where, like you said, your dad worked for such a long time in this sport, in racing. And maybe something happens to this kid and his father loses his job where everything gets taken from him. Now he has to beat the big corporation, the big corporations that's taking everything from him and his family, and he joins the Forza Motorsport tournament, and he starts out in D-class cars and works his way up to the the super cars and stuff like that. So it'd be cool if you guys over at Turn 10 decided to do something like that at some point, maybe just to throw a monkey wrench and what you normally do with motorsport. But man, a lot of people love the game, and it's rated so high that we just expect, like, seeing Forza get a I won't say a score, because in my opinion ratings aren't that important, but seeing Forza and it not being rated well or received well would be weird. after all the time, just know that you just get a good quality title anytime Turn 10 pumps out, and I think that's why a lot of people consider you guys one of the best studios out there in the industry. So that's really awesome.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, thank you. If there's pressure, it's it's always to show up the way everybody expects us to show up, which is top in our class.
Absolutely. Sam, any final questions?
Actually, I have one just really quickly. I know that maybe some of the more complicated stuff we can't dive into, but we've talked about Horizon a lot. Is there anything you can share regarding that relationship that you guys at Turn 10 have with Playground Games and how you might work together, or things that maybe interesting stuff people might not know?
Well, let's see. I think maybe most people would know that Forza Motorsport, the core title, is developed entirely or almost entirely in the States, in Redmond, Washington, here where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And we manage and publish the Horizon series, which is done by Playground Games in Leamington Spa. We've had a really good relationship with them over the years. But the truth is, you might be talking to the wrong guy, because whereas I know the executive producer for the Playground titles, I don't really interact with that title very much, or with that team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's all pretty. I mean, we certainly do share some technology, and we spend some time with each other. So it's all been, it's all really cordial,
Right.
helpful, and it's real. And we're lucky to have friendship and a relationship like that. But if you want more detail, you probably have to talk to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fine. That's cool.
Yeah, no, without question. So, man, E3's coming up. It's right around the corner. You're gonna be at E3 this year?
I'm not.
No.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited not to go.
I know. I don't have to go this year. Actually, I probably shouldn't say that too loud, because I'm going to go work and somebody's going to, hey, by the way, June, we need you.
Oh, yeah, last minute, we need you there.
We need you to go there. Yeah, I bet, man.
I'm looking forward to sitting on my couch and just watching.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I was just going to say, yeah, man, because you look at it's busy. It can be very busy and overwhelming at E3, I guess, for you devs, especially when you have 1 billion people talking to you every day for 3 days, and then you have preparation doing the event and everything like that for Microsoft. So yeah, I'm sure
Dude,
that can be a lot.
Wow. Hold on a second. You said 3 days?
Well, I mean, E3 is 3 days.
When you and I met each other, or when we saw each other last year at the where we were in the Xbox booth, right?
Right.
All the behind closed doors stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was day 8 for me.
Wow.
Because remember, nobody E3s like Turn 10 E3s. We showed up with 3 motion sleds.
Right.
We were one of the few games running true 4K, like from the game, true UHD. We had every single time somebody would plug in at one of our games, like at the gala event for the Xbox Fan Fest. We were there 2 days beforehand, making sure that the sled was set up and making sure that the screens were calibrated. Because remember, we care very much about how we look,
right?
And we're pushing the boundaries of the technology and the hardware. So I'll tell you the story about that last E3 UHD, that ultra high def, and the HDR for like brighter whites and stuff like that. The technology it's still, even now, kind of new. Not everybody knows exactly how to calibrate their TV. So I had 2 art directors on staff. Basically, every time somebody turned on an Xbox with our game on it, they'd go straight to that screen and recalibrate it to make sure that it was right. Because the default settings were at that time not always right for our game. And because just the older TVs, they don't always default to things like HDR on and stuff like that.
Right.
And we had set up so many stations.
I remember.
We had to move them across town. I remember when I used to go to E3 so long ago, not working for Turn 10, I would, like show up on Thursday and leave on Sunday night, and it was cool. Go to one party. I was there, I think it was 9 days last year.
Wow. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. No doubt.
You can't go anywhere and get that kind of energy, though.
Yeah, no, Turn 10 is awesome, man. When you guys show up, you got the cars displayed. You know what I'm saying? People taking pictures in front of the vehicles.
That's right.
You got the rigs out there, and that line is long, without question. That's how I was able to talk to Dan almost every year, because he was just like lingering around. Yep. And I just bubbled, hey, Dan, what's going on? He's like, hey, what's up? And we'll sit there and talk. I remember the first time meeting Dan. I think I was talking to Phil, or was I talking to Greeny? I was talking to one of them. And they was like, hey, Dan, this was the first time we met him. This was the first year we went, 2015. And he was like, hey, Dan Greenwald used to do MMA. We're like, really? And he's like, yeah. So we get there. We set this interview up. And one of our guys at the time who was doing the interview, Dan was so imposing. He couldn't even remember what he was asking him, like the questions that he had, because he felt sort of like a little intimidated by Dan. Because Dan's like this stoic figure, this red hair, this red beard. He looked like he belongs in God of War. So he's just standing there and he's, having the conversation. And Dan is super down to earth. He's like, yeah, he's talking about motorsport and everything, man. So love Dan.
Yeah.
Really cool guy, man. Hope to get him on the show one day. But yeah, man, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us some time to talk with you about, the things that you've done and experienced and what's happening with, what's happened with Forza and Turn 10, and very grateful for that.
Oh, man. I enjoy getting a chance to talk. So anytime.
Absolutely. So that's going to be it.
It was really fantastic.
So that's going to be it, man. Hopefully, the Tick team, the Tick podcast team, won't be attending E3 this year. We're sending a new team. We've actually gotten slightly big enough where we actually have teams now we can send out to E3, which is pretty cool. So I'll be taking a break from that. But hopefully, I'll get back next year. And if you're there, maybe you're not. Hopefully you're not, the way it sounds. But if you get back next year with the next Forza title, I'll definitely hang out and chat with you. Maybe we can link up or something like that.
Absolutely.
Cool. So that's going to be it for today's special. Once again, I want to thank Mr. Nick Laing, senior producer at Turn 10, for hanging out with the Inner Circle podcast, premier podcast for Xbox. I'm your host, KRSKLO, with Direwolf 484, and we are out of here. See you guys next episode. Peace.